Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 370. Directing teenage actors is like juggling jars of nitroglycerin, exhilarating and dangerous. Stephen King.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Today's show is sponsored by ever before for independent filmmakers to make money with their films. From predatory film distributors ripping them off to huckster film money with your film is broken and there needs to be a change. The future of independent filmmaking is the entrepreneurial filmmaker or the filmtrepreneur. In Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, I break down how to actually make money with your film projects and show you how to turn your indie film into a profitable business. With case studies examining successes and failures, this book shows you the step-by-step method to turn your passion into a profitable career. If you're making a feature film, series, or any other kind of video content, the Filmtrepreneur method will set you up for success. The book is available in paperback, ebook, and of course, audiobook. If you want to order it, just head over to www.filmbizbook.com. That's filmbizbook.com. Welcome to the first episode of 2020, and this is, my friends, the year of the Filmtrepreneur. The tribe is going to make a lot of money and impact a lot of lives with their art, their films, their projects, their content this year, and I am going to be there to help you do it. Now, today's guest is definitely the way to start off 2020. We have the legendary educator and writer Judith Weston, whose book Directing Actors, Creating Memorable Performances for Film and Television was a seminal book in my early directing career. I read it when I was in college. It is one of those books that is on most directors' shelves, and if it isn't on your shelves, you need to buy that book and read it. It is a wonderful book about actually how to work with an actor, how to pull a performance out of them, how to guide a performance out of them, how to talk in the language an actor understands. It is so important. I've seen so many independent filmmakers and big, studio filmmakers who have no idea how to talk to actors, who don't understand the language that they speak, don't understand where they're coming from, and it frustrates everybody involved. And Judy is there to help, bridge the gap between the actor and the director. And we dig deep into her methods, what she does, how she does it, who she's consulted and worked with in Hollywood, which is a who's who of Oscar-winning directors. So it's pretty amazing to have this conversation with her. So I was really excited to get her on the show. So without any further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Judy Weston. I'd like to welcome to the show Judith Weston. Thank you so much, Judith, for being on the show.
Thanks, Alex.
I appreciate
so much.
I truly appreciate you coming on the show because your book, Directing Actors, was such a big part of my early directing education, because a lot of the things that are in your book, they weren't teaching to me in film school, especially the film school I went to. They really didn't focus a lot on the directing aspect of things. So your book was like a treasure trove, and still is a lot. I mean, there's nothing that's gone stale. All these techniques, actors are still actors, directors are still directors. And your book was so instrumental in helping me in my directing career. So first of all, I want to just, as a fan, thank you for writing it.
Thank you.
Thank you for writing it and putting it out into the world. And we'll talk more about the book and the new version of it that just came out and other things. But before we get into it, I just want to ask you, how did you start on this journey on helping directors, direct actors?
I was thinking about this. I knew you were going to ask me this because people always start interviews with this, and I'd listened to some of your others. And I realized when I was thinking about it, I realized how much I just like talking about myself and talking about my work. What I like to do is do the work and, help people, like you say. But the short answer of how I got into it is I was an actor. I was an actor, and I began to see that some directors were good and some were not. And I began to notice certain things. And I think it was and I'd come up from theater. So in theater, you do a lot of rehearsal and you have a lot of collaboration, and you never argue about changing lines in theater, but you can argue with your director all you want. So that's different about theater than film. And but I loved getting into television and getting into film. I loved it right away. But the second job I got, the first job I got, I had maybe the best director in the world, and John Cordy. And the second job I got, it was for an afternoon special. I was living up in San Francisco, and they used to, that's where I'd gotten started acting, and they used to shoot up there. It was a great place to shoot, right? And cast the smaller roles from the local people. So I'd gotten this job as Miss Palmer, the teacher, right? After school special.